Hello, good morning, everyone. Kindly write your name at the chat box, your complete name, your destination, and the school you are in. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. dire na lang ko. Thank you. Wala mo tao dito, dire na po yung kainay tao.
Good morning, participants. For today's webinar, our host will be Mr. Jaymar Solarte. Thank you, Sir Jaymar, for accepting the challenge.
Hello, Doug. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
I hope. Good morning, Dr. Moro. I hope my audio is clear, loud and clear.
Loud and clear, sir.
Because here, I'm here in Cotabato right now, and we have patchy internet connection. So I would like to ask first an apology if sometimes my connections is not okay. And before that, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our different participants. Okay, since everyone is writing it using the chat box. We have here the Dean of the College of Teacher Education, Dr. Elizabeth Jane P. Sebastian from the Zamboanga City State Polytechnic College. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, sir.
And we also have here from GRMSU Dipolog Campus, Dipolog City, ma'am Daisy Ruiz. Good morning. And we also have here the Associate Dean of the College of Teacher Education, Ma'am Judith M. Maghanoy from Zamboanga City State Polytechnic College. And of course, we would like to acknowledge also the chat officials present at the State Polytechnic College who are present right now. Dr. Abelardo P. Moro, the OIC Supervising Education Program Specialist. Sir, thank you. And of course, our very own education supervisor in charge for the teacher education programs. We have Dr. Juan G. Quarisma. Ma'am, thank you for having me here this morning. It's my first time to meet different personalities, heads, deans of different higher education institutions in the Zamboanga Peninsula, the Region 9 GIs. Thank you for having me here. And of course, we have here Ma'am Nempa B. Pangilinan from GRMSU Main Campus. Okay, good morning, ma'am. And we also have here from GRMSU Dipolog Campus, Ma'am Glenda Tampo. Good morning and God bless, ma'am. And of course, we also have here the Dean of the College of Teacher Education, Arts and Sciences from St. Columban College, Pagadian City, and our very own Council of Deans of Teacher Education Region 9 President, Dr. Mario F. Alaya. Sir, thank you and good morning. Thank you
Thank
for,
you, sir. Jmar. Thank you,
thank
sir.
you. Okay, anyone who would like to be acknowledged, just write your information at the chat box.
Ano, pinangalan kan kakante eh. Oh, ini oh, dari mana LBC-an? Ito, mga payam itu. Ang bang mineral, kaya di kan kyo.
We would like to remind everyone that we are live via Facebook, also YouTube. It is now 10 o'clock, Sir JM.
Yes, ma'am. All right, once again, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Commission on Higher Education, Region 9, and in coordination with the Council of Deans for Teacher Education, Region 9, we would like to welcome everyone for this morning's webinar. Okay, an online meeting on responding the new normal. And this morning we'll be discussing about very interesting topic when it comes to academic accomplishments and different areas that needs to be addressed. And at the same time, in today's in responding to new normal, of course, there are different strategies and plans to be given attention. And this morning, of course, it is an honor to have you here as your master of ceremony. This is Jay Marsolati for this morning's webinar. And for the meantime, just please be informed on the chat advisory number 7 via audiovisual presentation to be flashed by our host to give us guidelines.
Guidelines for the prevention, control and mitigation of the spread of coronavirus disease 2019 in higher education institutions. Commission on Higher Education COVID Advisory Number 7. The 24th of May 2020. On HEI's operations and work arrangements. In areas under ECQ, MECQ, and GCQ, HEIs are advised to observe the following guidelines.
Suspension of face-to-face or in-person classes until further directives from the IETF or issuance by the proper government authority that the province or city will be under MGCQ. For HEIs which intend to offer summer classes, midterm, and or mid-year intersession shall only be for the following students: graduating students who need to complete their academic requirements, students whose subjects are scheduled in the summer under the PSG of their degree program, and students taking graduate studies. Only HEIs with capability for full online learning will be allowed to conduct summer classes.
OJT and internship programs for and in local remain suspended until ECQ, MECQ, GCQ, and NGCQ has been lifted. However, for HEI and NGCQ areas, in-campus OJT and internship programs can be authorized provided there is strict compliance with physical distancing and other health protocols.
The opening of classes for 2020 to 2021 shall be based on the HEI's delivery mode subject to compliance with minimum health standards and the situation on the ground. HEIs using full online education can open any time after May 31st, 2020. HEIs using flexible learning can open anytime in August 2020. HEIs using significant face-to-face or in-person mode can open no earlier than the 1st of September 2020. All HEIs who are using the old academic calendar, June to May, are encouraged to change their academic year and open in August 2020 or later in the year.
HEIs should prepare for the opening of 2020 to 2021 by undertaking the following: preparation of the HEI facilities to comply with minimum health standards such as mandatory wearing of masks, hand washing and sanitation practices, safe physical distancing, reconfiguration of classroom spaces, provision of markers in public places, prohibition of mass gathering, among others.
Consultation with local health officials and local government units to determine the health situation in the locality, availability of public transportation, and other support services necessary for the operation of HEI, preparation of a contingency or continuity plan as to the precautionary and other health protocols in case there are suspected or confirmed cases, adoption of a flexible learning strategy or mode in delivering instruction by ensuring appropriate facility delivery system, faculty complement, and student support.
In coordination with local health officials and the local government unit, implementation of any of the following flexible enrollment procedures: online enrollment and payment through remittance services, scheduling of students who will be allowed to enroll on any given day, opening of satellite enrollment sites as practicable, other similar arrangements to limit the number of students allowed at any given time and ensure safe physical distance.
Mass gatherings are prohibited. HEIs are prevented from conducting in-person graduation ceremonies and other school activities until the prohibition for mass gathering is lifted. Private HEIs are advised to follow the guidelines of government agencies such as the Department of Labor and Employment as regards to the deployment of its faculty and its staff.
All right. I hope everyone is guided with the CHED advisory number 7. And moving on, for our invocation, may require everyone to please mute all the microphone to give us time for our interfaith prayer via audiovisual presentation.
Dakilang may likha sa kalingat pang unawa, mangyari ang iyong diwa sa langit at sa lupa. اللهم إنك ترى أن هذه القلوب قد اجتمعت على محبتك واتقت على هذه المكان إيمانك وتوحدت على دعوتك فوثق ربيطاتها يا الله وأتم أدها واملأها بنورك الذي لا يخبو واشرح صدورنا بفائد الإيمان بك وجميل توكل عليك واهدنا سبل الوحدة والسلام والصلاح ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار يا الله أنت مستجاب لهذا الدعاء وعليك توكلنا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين آمين الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, our loving Father, Creator of heaven and earth, we thank you for your generosity and kindness, and ask that you hear us in times of needs. Make us worthy of your blessing, and keep us from further want. Help us restore our abundance here on earth, so that we may turn more attention to your divine kingdom. Help us become a blessing to our family and others, to glorify and honor your name. We ask this to our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Iadya nyo kami sa pagmamataas upang maiwaksi ang lupit at dahas. At samahang lumikha ng pamayanan payapa sa kalikasan ka. Kakanyahat paniniwala.
All right, thank you very much. And once again, welcome to our online meeting on responding to new normal. This morning, we have our brilliant research speakers who will discuss interesting topic about research, namely social impact of research in education and introduction to qualitative research. And for the meantime, to have a proper decorum for having video conferencing, let us check the do's and don'ts of the video conferencing. right? I hope everyone is guided with the do's and don'ts for us to have a proper protocol or proper decorum or etiquette when it comes to video conferencing. And this morning, to welcome us in this morning's webinar, let us welcome our very own OIC Supervising Education Program Specialist of the Commission on Higher Education Region 9, none other than Dr. Abelardo E. Morok. Sir, let us welcome him for his welcome remarks.
Thank you so much, Sir Jmar Solarte, sir.
Yes, sir.
A pleasant morning to everyone. In behalf of the Technical Division of CHEDRO 9, I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks to all our educators, teachers, professors, and of course to all our deans of the different higher education institutions for your unwavering commitment and participation on this webinar, in partnership with the Council of Deans for Teacher Education Program, headed by Dr. Mario Alayon. And I personally commend our colleague here, Dr. Joan Quaresma, the supervisor in charge for the TEP, for her continuous engagement, and of course the support to the teacher education programs and to the council as well. Last but not the least, to my colleagues here in the technical division, headed by our very own Dr. Jacinta Tan, the chief of the technical division. I also would like to welcome another group of educators. I'm introducing to you the Council of Deans for Criminal Justice Education, headed by our new president, Dr. Ruel Pallega, and the deans of the different criminology schools in the region, who are also present in this platform. Again, I'm thanking Dr. Alayon and Dr. Quaresma for their generous invitation, and I'm happy that for the first time the two councils are converging one endeavor. Of course, allow me to acknowledge and welcome our two distinguished resource speakers, Professor Bobito C. Anito Jr. and Director Michael Vincent P. Caceres, who shall be formally introduced later. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to them in advance for gracing this activity, and will be sharing their experiences and expertise in their own field, the different research approaches, and its respective elements. As we all know, basically the quantitative and qualitative researches or combination of both approaches. I believe our distinguished speakers would be able to guide and facilitate us the pathways in our engagement with our respective institutions, and be able to help us in the course of our discussion in this meeting. And I also believe these research approaches are very much helpful in planning our designs and methods depending on the kind of research output we need, so to speak. We all know that our basic engagement as teachers and educators are focused on instruction, research, and community service or extension, which are inseparable outcomes of higher education institutions aligned with the mandates of CHED. So our dear educators and academicians, series of webinars participated in the past and today are your profession and still continue to enhance your instructional approaches. I believe you are imbued with patience, understanding, open-mindedness, compassion, fortitude, and all other attributes, and as such, there is no such thing as too much information, particularly when it comes to academic freedom that impact our academic workloads that is so critical to our stakeholders, the students, and our communities. Your outputs in all the webinars in the past and today are crucial in the quality of your deliveries, and that is the reason why CHED and the Council of Deans of different programs initiated similar activities such as this, because we have critical role and common concern that we carry out in our respective mandates. Lastly, with that, I look forward to hearing the results of today's engagement. Thank you. Good morning. Buenos dias con todo.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abelardo P. Baruk, our OIC Supervising Education Program Specialist. And to give us an overview or rationale about this program, we will call on Dr. Gilbert Silicio, the Treasurer of the Council of Deans for Teacher Education, Region 9. Sir?
Good morning to all of you, to our Regional Director, Dr. Rudy P. Garcia, Dr. Jacinta Tan, the Chief Program Supervisors, our program supervisors, deans, participants in this webinar. Blessed morning to all of us. Allow me to greet all of you. Greetings from St. Coluban College, Panagdait sa Tanan. The main theme of this webinar conference is importance of research and data mining. This conference aimed to respond to the new normal. For this meeting's coverage will be in the areas of research, where experts will also discuss data mining to keep up our enthusiasm in promoting research in our workplace. Our presence adds one more feather to the crown of this webinar conference. Also, we are very thankful to our distinguished speakers for accepting our invitations. They will be discussing different topics related to research as we face the new normal. Our first speaker will talk about social impact on research in education, and an introduction to qualitative research will be given to us by our second speaker. Facing the new normal, we cannot deny that the challenge of deriving insights from the Internet of Things has been recognized as one of the most exciting and key opportunities for both academe and industry nowadays. Advanced analysis of big data streams from sensors and devices is bound to become a key area of data mining research as number of applications requiring such processing increases. The coronavirus has been around 4 or 5 months now, and there are more than 2,000 research papers published about it. I guess we should not be surprised as the whole world is focused on this pandemic. Now the question is, how do you make sense of all this mind-boggling research which deals with every aspect of the pandemic? The current situation also creates opportunities to all HAI research enthusiasts to adapt by looking to those who are already relying on vast amounts of data collected remotely, as well as the scientific community to better understand the explanatory power and characteristics of survey methods beyond the tools and approaches used by most of us. Putting all the higher institutions' vision in place in the post-pandemic world will require a pervasive infrastructure of research such as cloud computing, streaming, and the Internet of Things. Thus, data mining is one of those because it is the process to extract new aspects and patterns from a large data set using the methods of at the crossing of machine learning, statistics, and database systems. It is also a field of knowledge, discovery, and databases, which is the area of discovering the distinct and potentially beneficial information from large amounts of data set. Educational data mining is theory-oriented and focuses on the connection to pedagogical theory. Given that in the real world, there is a great diversity of different learning contexts, they determine the analytical approaches utilized by EDM. Therefore, how EDM can be beneficial in the real educational practices, as demonstrated in the research, could be crucial, and these are the challenges that our distinguished speakers will be discussing to us in this webinar. I hope our learnings in this webinar will be of great help to encourage all of us to engage in research even in this time of the pandemic. Thank you very much, and once again, a blessed morning to all of us.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Gilbert Celestio, the Treasurer of the Councils of Deans of Tertiary Education Region 9, for that concrete and detailed information as to the webinar that we are going to conduct. And of course, to give us the overview of our first speaker, let us welcome Dr. Narcisa Borreros, the Board of Director of the Councils of Deans for Teacher Education Region 9. Let us give her a virtual warm of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone. Our first speaker is currently completing his Doctor of Philosophy in Science Education, specializing in physics education at the La Salle University, Manila, where he also finished his master's degree in teaching physics. Currently, he is an associate professor at Jose Rizal Memorial State University, main campus, Dapitan City, and a consultant at Jose Rizal University Research Office in Mandaluyong City. As an educator, he taught undergraduate physics courses in Ateneo de Zamboanga University and graduate level professional education and research courses in De La Salle University, Manila. As a researcher, he was engaged in several funded research projects in various capacities and has published research articles in Scopus and ISI Index journals. He was one of the core researchers of the recently completed TRED-funded project TPAC in the Philippine Science, Technology, Education, and Mathematics Education. Currently, he leads a team of researchers at Jose Rizal University in a project re-engineering the Jose Rizal University learning ecosystem. He has been in various universities and organizations in the country, conducting trainings and workshops on educational action research, research methods, and research publication. His research interest includes science education, teacher professional development, and qualitative method in research. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and privileged to introduce to you our speaker who will talk on social impact of research in education. Please help me welcome the pride of JRMSU, Professor Joveto C. Anito Jr.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dean, for the generous introduction. Okay, thank you. Allow me to share my screen. Good morning, everyone. I hope my screen is visible to all and my audio is clear. Please let me know if.
Good morning, Prof.
Good
Loud
morning,
and clear.
Doc. Thank you. Sige,
Good morning,
umpisahan natin. I only have about 1 hour to cover the presentation and the Q&A, so I hope you bear with me if I skip some parts. I hope you bear with me if I'll rush some of the parts of the presentation. All right, so this is going to be a talk on the social impact of research in education. So it's research in education. We focus on what our research in education can do and how we can promote social impact with the education, with the research that we do under the under education, under the discipline of education. I'd like to encourage everyone to ask questions. I was supposed to tell you to just raise your hand anytime during the presentation, but because of the briefer a while ago, so I removed that part. So you can just write your questions in the chat box, and I'll be happy to look into those questions and address those after my presentation. So I hope that I'll be able to finish this in 45 minutes. So we'll have about 15 minutes to have the Q&A after this. Disclaimer, this is not going to cover data mining, but I'll be covering a bit about literature review as the closest proxy of data mining to education researchers. So I'll talk about that, but not as data mining per se. I'll begin with my paradigm as a qualitative researcher. So you can also locate my presentation with regard to the general research sphere. And so you can also follow and you can see where I'm coming from with this presentation. If you have been with me in my previous talks, perhaps it is always my practice. We've seen that it's always my practice to start paradigm setting every time I give a talk. So this is where I come from. So the presentation is basically because of my orientation. Right now, also I have struggled as a researcher coming from the very positivist and a very quantitative oriented university into transforming into a qualitative researcher, although my transitionary period was about grounded theory, which is also a positivist approach. But I managed to reach the level of being in a transformative paradigm of research. So right now, what is important for me is what our research can do. So I thought about methods, the very important part of research before. And then I finally realized that methods, after all, should not be your main consideration in your research. It has to be the purpose of your research, the objective of your research. So even if you have a very good method of research, but after all, the research has no social impact, then it might as well have not been done at all, or your research might have not been done at all. I'm also taking the blend of some pragmatics in pragmatist point of view in my research. I always look at what works. So that entails or that explains my very emergent character in terms of research. I had an article that talks about how I diverged from the traditional grounded theory in our project or in our research because I didn't trust anymore the process itself. I didn't trust anymore the method itself. The method doesn't suit our context, so I had to revise. I have to devise to suit what the context is, what's our context. So I'm more concerned about what works, what will help, what will benefit, and what can be significant in my research. So this is my paradigm as I discuss, as I present to you some of the concepts and ideas about the social impact of research in this presentation. I'd like to begin with these two directions of doing research. One is we do research because of our intention to have a scientific or an academic impact. This is evident in our research, where we always consider research in order for us to be promoted, research in order for us to publish, or research in order for us to abide by or to comply with the requirements of the university with requirements with PASO, or requirements with any regulatory body. So that's looking at the academic impact or the scientific impact. So we're more concerned about the structure. We're more concerned about the template. We're more concerned about what is being asked of us because that's what we are after for. The other impact or the other direction of doing research is also to look at our social impact. What change in behavior does our research bring into the community or into the discipline? So did we cause some change in behavior, change in policy, change in understanding and practice, or change in the manner of understanding and in the manner of devising practice? So what is the social impact of our research? The sad thing is researchers have recognized or have noticed also that the fulfillment of one direction in research could mean renunciation of the other. So it means that if you're more focused into the academic or the scientific impact of our research, you tend to forget about the social impact of your research. I'm not sure if that is true to your context or if you experience it, but that's according to researchers. They realize that people tend to become too obsessed with the academic impact of their research, following APA, following the guidelines of the university, obsessed with Scopus and ISI. They forget about the social impact of their research, and because that's how they see it. They realize that when one is concerned about academic impact, they tend to forget about the social impact. Or for those who are so concerned about social impact, they also tend to forget about the academic impact. So what they are after for is just to make the research useful and to make the research impactful to the target community. And this is true to most of the extension programs. So they tend to forget about the academic impact. But the ideal thing is it has to be a blend between the academic impact and the social impact. And so we're talking this morning about the social impact of research because I know we've been bombarded with many lectures and many ideas already about the academic impact of our research. We've been studying this from undergrad to master's to PhD, you know. What is the social impact of our research? Social impact basically or simply means it changes the ways of life. So the social impact is the answer to the Miss Universe question. What can your research do to make life or to make the world a better place to live in? Or what can your research do to make the lives of people better? Okay, so it could entail, or social impact entails change in our culture. So change in our understanding, change in our values, change on our manner of generating knowledge or manner of using or utilizing knowledge. It could entail change in our communities, our political systems, our environment, health and well-being, personal and property rights, fears and aspirations. So if you talk about change in the people, behavior of people, knowledge of people, practices of people, we're talking about the social impact of your research. Change means that the research results to policies that produce improvements in society. So when we talk about social impact of our research, it is about our research producing something. It could be a document, it could be a policy brief, a policy recommendation. It's something that can be used by the authorities or the regulatory bodies as a matter of policy or as an input to their policies. Okay, so that's basically what we mean by social impact and the change that the research brings into the society or the community. Why do we aim for social impact? The answer is very basic and the answer is very simple. Research is nothing without any social value. If your research doesn't translate into something that is useful, first of all, to you as a researcher, the first person or the first unit who should benefit from the research is yourself. You do research because, after all, you are the first beneficiary of your research. So, if you talk about research about improvement of teaching, the first person or the first unit who will benefit from that research is yourself, because you will have an improved teaching strategy or improved teaching practices. Research is nothing without any social value. So we look at the social value of our research every time we conduct or we plan or we conceptualize and we undertake research. We aim for social impact because there are complex social problems that require science to be understood. Science is necessary, research is necessary, scholarly work is necessary to understand some of the social problems. Perhaps some of you may not understand students who are tardy in class. Perhaps some of you may not understand why students are having difficulty understanding a specific lesson in your course. It's because we lack understanding of this from the point of view of science. So we need to blend in science and our experience and our observation. So we need to do research and focus in our research the social impact of our research. Research is also an investment. We need to look at the social impact because whenever we do research, it's an investment. Even if we don't get funding from the institution, even if we don't get funding from the from CHED, research is still investment. You spend time, you spend some resources from your own pocket, and you spend a lot of sleepless nights doing your research. It's really an investment. So if you are investing into something that doesn't generate social impact in return, so that's that's not good. Okay, so and the more uh, the bigger picture of that is when we get funding from funding agencies like CHED, for example, DOST, for example. We look at the social impact because DOST, CHED, and other funding agencies are investing money to that. Apparently, we don't have much to spend for everyone's research. Money, resources are finite. There's a limitation of our money. That's why CHED, whenever they call for proposals, DOST, whenever they call for proposals, it's always a competitive uh, in a competitive scheme. That is, the best proposals win. Ideally, I'm adding in parentheses. Ideally, the best proposals are supposed to win in that particular call for proposals. It's because they're spending money, and if they spend money, they don't want just their money to be spent to nothing. It has to generate some social impact. I'd like to talk about the specific requirements in some funding agencies when we talk about funding and social impact. So research, when it is funded by the USD, DOST will look for the 6Ps and the S&E. The 6Ps include publication, patent, product, people, partnership, policy, and the S&E pertains to the social and economic impact. Okay, so when we do teacher research, we can follow the 6Ps and the S&E as well. So we can look at how many publications will be generated from my research. If I start conceptualizing this research, publication has to be there. So we don't talk about publication towards the end of our research. We talk about publication the moment we start conceptualizing our research. We consider where to publish it, what are the requirements of the target journal where we intend to publish our results. We have to look into that and how many papers will be generated from this particular project. So that's publication. We also look at patent and intellectual property. Will the material that I will develop be given it or will be applied for intellectual property? For example, will the product or the device that I'll develop be applied for or be approved for patent or be applied for patent? What are the products that I will produce? What are the people services that I will be able to initiate or to be able to introduce? What are partnerships or what forms of partnerships and who are the people that could potentially be invited to forge linkages and forge consortia with our university or with my group or with my research group, for example? We look at policy, for example. What policies of CHED Region 9 will be affected by my policy by my research? What policies in DepEd will be affected by my research? Or what policies in the general educational aspect in the Philippines will be affected by my research? And we also look at the social and the economic impact of our research, which will generate income to the target beneficiaries. So we look into this. So you say, is it applicable to education? The answer is yes. There's no exemption because education research could bring or could lead into these products or could lead into these outputs as well. We can look at also the CHED funded projects. CHED looks at specifically the beneficiaries. So when CHED asks for proposals, CHED will ask you who are the target beneficiaries of your research. You specify them. How many of this? How many are the beneficiaries? So when you give them this particular amount, you propose, for example, 5 million, they will count how many people will benefit from your proposal because they want to look at the efficiency of the budget that they give, so that the budget will be utilized or be benefited or will benefit to many people. And some indicators of success could also bring us back to the 6Ps and the S&E in research. I'll have to give some key considerations in research. Social improvement must drive research. So perhaps in our experience, there are times or there are others who do research, conceptualize research because of their preference to methods. For example, you may start conceptualizing research that are primarily quantitative because you were only exposed to quantitative research. Or if you're a qualitative researcher, you conceptualize research that are qualitative only. So it means that in your pattern of developing research or conducting research, you start with a method and then let the method decide what topics are best or best suit to the method. So the other way is what is ideal, or we encourage you to do the other way around. So look at the social improvement first. You look at the purpose of your research first. You look at the objectives of your research first before you look into the methods or what method is best fit for this particular purpose. That could entail being at least knowing the mixed methods research or knowing both quality and quantity research so that you can be more flexible when it comes to the purpose or objectives of your research. If your objective of research, if the research questions require you to gather quantitative data, then you know how to make sense with quantitative data. If your research questions require you to gather some qualitative data, you know also how to gather some qualitative data. So basically, that's making sure that the social improvement, the purpose of research, or the objectives of research are the primary is the primary consideration in your research rather than the methods. Okay, so another key consideration in your research is to align your research with some of the government visions or government or regulatory bodies agenda. Okay, for example, the National Research Agenda, UN Sustainable Development Goals, National Harmonized Research Agenda, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. The National Harmonized Research Agenda, I'm going to present that later. The Higher Education Research Agenda, we have that. The Basic Education Research Agendas, if you are taking BS Ed, BE Ed, you have to look at the Basic Education Research Agenda also to inform your research. It has to align with the Basic Education Research Agenda because you know very well that the DepEd or the Basic Education is the primary group that will utilize the results or that will apply the results of your research. So how do we do that? So in appraising your own research, perhaps some of you have already started their research or some of you may want to start their research. You can start with the title, look at the title, look at the objectives of your research and see where your title or your objectives align with any of these in the surrogate social values. We call it the surrogate social values because these are representatives of the ideals of the people or the representatives of what the people want. Okay, so you have the Philippine Development Plan, the Ambition 2040, for example. Where do you align your research with the Ambition 2040? Where do you align with the vision of President Duterte with the Ambition 2040, for example? Where do you align your research in terms of the Harmonized National Research and Development Agenda of the OST? Where do you align in terms of the Higher Education Research Agenda of CHED? Where do you align in terms of the Basic Education Research Agenda of DepEd? Where do you align in terms of the research agenda of your university in the first place? Do you know what your university wants in terms of your research? So you have to know all these things. You have to know the institutional research agenda so that you can align to these things. You can align to these surrogate social values because looking into these things, aligning your research into any of these things would ensure that your research is useful. Your research will yield some social value afterwards. This is the overall strategic framework of the Philippine Development Plan. You just simply see where your research aligns to any of this. Malasakit, pagbabago, patuloy na pag-unlad. Okay, so that's our Ambition 2040. So look at specific where specifically do you align to this framework. You can look at the national or the Harmonized National Research and Development Agenda. If you are into basic research, you can look at the Basic Research Agenda of the NRCP. We can the education component is also in the Basic Research Agenda or the NIBRA of NRCP. You can look at the this one is the National Research Development Agenda. And then the Higher Education Research Agenda. Although the Higher Education Research Agenda 3, I'm not sure, perhaps some CHED personnel can shed light on this. I've been looking for the NERA 3. Custer was already talking about this in 2018, but until now I cannot find the document on the NERA 3 or the National Higher Education Research Agenda. I don't know what happened, but they had a very good plan already about the content of the NERA 3, but I cannot find any document about the NERA 3. But at any rate, you can still use the National Higher Education Research Agenda 2 or the NERA 2, okay, which gives us basically this. The Basic Education Research Agenda also. You can look at the Basic Education Research Agenda and see where your research aligns to the objectives, to the thrust, to the agenda of DepEd. This is on DepEd Order 39 of 2016. Our regional development plan, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. This one is also anchored on the Philippine Development Plan, but it may be good to look at how this resonates the context of the Zamboanga Peninsula, where we aim for a sustainable agri-fishery industry in the Philippines. Okay, so maybe you can look at how your education research could lead into addressing the sustainable agri-fishery industry in the Philippines. Some of the institutional research agenda. What does your university want to accomplish through research? You can look at the research agenda of your university. See where your research aligns. And what themes must researchers focus on? So maybe your research office has already stipulated some of the research topics or the research areas where faculty must align with. Okay. So I'll discuss this briefly, some of the dimensions of social impact. We have the epistemological and the objectual dimensions of our of social impact. Right. It's composed of the object and the motive of research. What does your research want to do, or what's your motivation, or what's your objective in doing the research? What do you aim to achieve in your research? As I've said, It has to be the primary consideration in your research, not the method. So forget about your method. Even if you do not know how to do it, just think about what needs to be done. Okay, so that's the challenge. Start your research with something that needs to be done, not on something that you know already. Okay, so not the method that you know already. So even if you don't know qualitative research, don't be scared to engage in a qualitative research or a research that requires qualitative data or analysis of qualitative data. The social and institutional dimension, look at the networks of collaboration through the impact of research. You can look at the institutional research agenda. How does your research inform research agenda? Perhaps your research could inform your research office that, ma'am, maybe there is a need to add this in our research agenda, or ma'am, there is a need to remove this from our research agenda. Your institutional research committee, how will it inform the institutional research committee? Does it generate something or a new knowledge about the process of research or the methods of research? In terms of your ethics review board or in terms of your ethics committee in the university or in the school, if you have any established ethics committee. Okay, so look at how your research could impact or could inform this. As I've said, social impact talks about change in behavior, change in culture, change in understanding, and change in the manner of getting or manner of understanding or manner of generating knowledge. So if you influence people, if you influence a certain group of people with your research, that's you know, realizing the social impact of your research. So if your research ended up to be shelved in your library or in the corner of the room, then that's not making any social impact at all. So disseminate, have your research done and evaluated by others so that they can also see the value of the social value of your research. Okay, other things or other dimensions of social impact could also be in terms of the research instruments. The methods. How does your research affect the research instruments? Perhaps in your research, you realize that the instrument that we are using now is no longer applicable, or the method that we are using now is no longer applicable. When you talk about disseminating research or reporting research, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will just report the results of your research. You can also report your experience in doing the research, because that can basically address or that can basically inform the readers or the audience about what was done, what worked, and what didn't work. Because if it worked in your context, perhaps they can replicate it in their context. If it didn't work in your context, perhaps they can find a way to make it work in their context or revise the process, revise the method, or recalibrate the tool. Right? So basically, it affects uh, the method, the instruments. Okay, so report all those things in your research. Some spatial and geographical dimensions. Is it only applicable in Region 9 or can it be replicated in other regions? Is it only applicable to education teachers or it can also be replicated in other disciplines? I have this mapping framework or public value mapping framework as one of the things that I recommend to be applied in your research in education or research pertaining to education. You look at the value of knowledge on social goals and public interest. So you look at the people, you look at the politics, you look at the relationship of people and see, or the experiences and the practices of people and see where your research can get in. So when it comes to educational research, you base your research on what you observe in school. Maybe it's about the teaching of a particular subject in a certain group of students, because what we want to make sure is that after the research, there is a certain group or identified group of people who will make use of our research or the results of our research. We want to make sure that there is a certain identified group of people that will benefit from our research. So you start with this group of people, observe them, look at their context, and don't go too far. Look around yourself. What is your context? Who are you dealing with every day? If you're dealing with students, then look at your relationship with the students. Look at your role, look at their role, and see what needs to be improved within your relationship with the stakeholders of education. When it comes to the procedures or processes in school, you can observe that. Start with that. Start by looking at what needs to be improved in our context, what needs to be improved in our processes. So do a research that addresses that need for improvement. Afterwards, you will generate something that will be very significant to that organization because that will be used primarily by that organization where you draw the problem from. Okay? Public value are those that provide normative consensus about the rights, benefits, prerogatives to which citizens should and should not be entitled. Okay, so the obligations of citizens to the society, the principles on which governments and policies should be based. If you downscale it to the classroom level or the institutional level, you can also look at the culture and the practices, the behavior, the understanding, the knowledge, and the values of the members of the institutional community or the higher education community. There are some factors that affect the social impact. One is the characteristic of knowledge. Knowledge must spring from where? One, from the surrogate public values. As I have emphasized, knowledge must spring from what our people wants or what our people want to achieve. So the Ambition 2040 is the representation or the framework of what the Filipino people want to achieve in 2040. All right, so this is the collective vision of the Filipino people for 2040. Okay, so look into that because knowledge has to come from that surrogate public value. Knowledge could come from some strategic plans. Your university, look at these things from your institution. Get a copy if necessary, if possible. What is the direction of the university? Where are we headed to? How can I contribute to the direction of the university? Right. So also look at some of the research gaps. This is the very common. We based our research from literature. We always base it from the research gap. All right. So there's nothing wrong with that, but the research gap may not specifically or may not necessarily resonate your context in your institution. So the research gap may be the gap of research in another context with some with a different geographical characteristics or with some different spatial characteristics, right? So while literature is encouraged or literature review is encouraged to see the research gap, you can best get the gap by looking around you, looking at the practices, looking at the different behavior of people. Or some public values you can get, you can do survey, you can get their voice, what they need or what specifically they want to be instituted. Some institutional arrangements and management affecting knowledge, some linkages, research and extension, etc. Right. Okay, so I will also present this pathway to impact. Basically, this is a very comprehensive framework that looks into the impact of your research to the different stakeholders. So you can do a research, look at the evidence and inputs, which will lead you to dissemination. Your dissemination should raise awareness. And aside from raising awareness, your dissemination purpose should be so that readers will be able to access your data or to access your evidence. So if you say that this is useful, your dissemination process should lead your people to the evidence of why you're saying that this research is useful or what data can be provided to prove that this research or this strategy, for example, is useful. Uptake, that's basically the institutionalization or the adoption of that evidence. So perhaps your university will adopt it, or CHED will adopt it, or DepEd will adopt it. Okay, so perhaps it will become a CHED order or a CHED memorandum or a DepEd order. And then look at the implementation and then another continuous improvement analysis of the implementation. So the feedback loop will tell you that it's going to go another cycle again in the next round. Okay, so a similar pattern or similar framework can also be applied. The PDSA cycle or the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. So when we talk about social impact of research, perhaps we can consider this as a framework. We can look at the plan, do, the study, act components of our research. So planning could entail about what needs to be improved in our context. So it's basically about checking your context, understanding your context, defining the system, defining the current processes in the system, the procedures, what works in the procedure, what doesn't work in our current procedure, and the current performance of our system. Magaling ba tayo sa present practices natin? Does it yield positive results? Does it yield exceptional results or satisfactory results, things like that. So that entails planning, and then we generate some action plans from that. So if we see that there's something going on, there's something that needs to be improved, then we propose something else, right? So and then we implement that something else. We study, we check whether it is effective, and then we decide whether it has to be adapted or it has to be rejected or it has to be modified or refined. And the cycle goes on and on and on. Okay, so it entails checking the quality of your implemented plan or the action plan. Okay, so you can adapt the PDSA cycle in your classroom. For example, you plan about how to improve teaching of algebra, for example. Then you can look at the results of the previous batches, what specific topic under the course needs to be improved, or what specific topic where students score low, things like that, so that you can have a proposed action plan. This one is the model of assessment, the model of assessing the assessment model of the JRMSU. We call it the process of redesigning the JRMSU assessment model. We proposed a certain model that correspond to our transition into the flexible learning system, right? So when we were organized as a committee to look into the flexible learning system in the university, we also looked at the flexible assessment as a component of flexible learning. So when we change learning, we also have to change the assessment process or the process of assessing learning. So together with the flexible learning system or embedded in the flexible learning system is the change in our assessment model. I'm going to show the model later as part of this presentation. So what we did was we had some surveys. We gave survey to students, we gave survey to teachers, we gave survey to parents. We want to see what their concerns are, what are their what are their reservations, what they have, what their capacities are, what their constraints are, what are their preferences, for example, in the flexible learning system. We did some literature review. We looked at flexible learning. We looked at outcomes-based education so that we can blend outcomes-based education, which is what CHED prescribes, to our context in Zamboanga del Norte. Then we developed this HEI-specific and future-oriented assessment framework, which I'm going to present later. So this is now the planning stage. We developed the framework, which is our action plan, our strategy in order to address the issues and concerns regarding assessment, because many of the parents really raise a concern about assessment under the flexible learning system. How do you make sure that it's the students who really answer the test, for example, things like that. So we have to, uh, provide an assessment model that also corresponds to the flexible learning strategy. And that's assuring social impact through assessment of learning outcomes. Then we started doing the reformulation of the institutional learning outcomes. We ensured that the institutional learning outcomes or the learning outcomes of JRMSU are aligned with the institutional vision, mission, and goals, aligned with the existing PSGs of SHED, and then we are currently forming a team of researchers who will be designing some assessment scales based on the framework. We did some trainings on outcomes-based flexible learning. We picked the the guru of outcomes-based education in the country to talk about outcomes-based education to us, so that we will be guided about the implementation of outcomes-based education at the same time the outcomes-based assessment. And then we will be doing series of trainings on continuous improvement, specifically action research, all throughout the semester in order for us to be able to see how we are faring so far in the implementation of the flexible learning system. And then part of our study is the validation of the assessment scales, evaluation of the trainings, and looking at some MVP testing. Our MVP is our resume, or the minimum viable product is the resume. So for example, if I'm going to present a resume of a teacher education graduate of JRMSU to CHED, for example, or to DepEd, for example, we want to know whether CHED or DepEd would accept our graduates from JRMSU, right? So these are things that we are studying for improvement in JRMSU. And then apparently towards the end, we look at the process of disseminating the key results, institutionalizing the research and training on assessment, and then some planning for continuous improvement. And apparently it will go on and on and on. Another cycle will be about planning again, doing something else again, and then studying that something else, and then institutionalizing something else again. So that's the cycle of ensuring that your research is useful. So when you say the research is useful, it's not stationary, it's not linear, it's cyclic, it's iterative, paulit-ulit, you know? Hindi siya nagsa-stop. Now, I'd like to present this as a framework of our assessment in the university. So if you can see in the framework, we have introduced a lot. So that could entail even the recalibration of our admission examinations, recalibration of our admission policies, asking the question, are we really taking in students who can, or the students that we need? Or are we really taking in students who can perform well? Especially in licensure examinations, things like that. We are also introducing some exit examination schemes so that we can make sure that our program outcomes have been achieved. So as a way of measuring the program outcomes. So these are some of the things that are new in the university that we are introducing because we want to make sure that we are, affecting behavior, we are affecting the culture, we're affecting knowledge, we're affecting even the generation or the process of generating knowledge. You can also downscale it in the classroom level. So within the semester or during the semester, every faculty or a faculty can do this. Faculty can review the student performance. You can establish a trend. For example, you've been teaching the course for 4 years. So you can establish the trend or the performance of students in the past 4 years. See where they score low, see where they score high. Build from where they score high and improve where they score low. Look at the literature. Align with the flexible learning modalities or alignment with the flexible learning modalities. Does my teaching align with the principles of flexible learning? And of course, the design of the learning packages. So in the design of learning packages, we look at will this learning package or learning module help students realize or achieve the learning outcome or the prescribed learning outcome. And then the implementation part, you distribute the learning packages, you orient your students, you monitor them, you seek feedback, you establish a feedback mechanism. That's for the formative assessment. And then you provide some supplementary learning resources and you do some summative assessment. Then you check that. Are the students learning? Pag pinagawa natin ng research, nakakagawa ba sila ng research after the course? So that's a big input already to your teaching or to your process of instruction. So what needs to be done or what needs to be changed next year so that the students will really be able to do research after the course. If it didn't work this year, then there's something wrong. There's something that needs to improve. Right? So that's basically looking at targeting the certain group who will benefit from your research, and that's ensuring the social impact of your research. In some participatory action research or in some action research designs, you can look at these things. There are 7 criteria to see so that you can ensure that our research is useful. One is the objectives. When you talk about objectives of your educational research, make sure that your objective is reflective of the real issue or concern. Meaning to say, you cannot just do a research in education that is primarily based on literature, because literature may not necessarily reflect your context. Who will use your research afterwards if it is primarily about literature? So blend your literature with the real experience, your real observation. What is observable? What is problematic in the context, or what is problematic in our practice? So that when you do the research, when you have the results, there is an identified group of people who will benefit from your results, right? So when you talk about objectives, it has to be something that is reflective of the real issue or concern. And the implication to that is you have to be open to amendments. So gone are those days that when we have the title, it has to be the title all along. Your title, your objectives may emerge into something else. Maybe the next speaker can elaborate this about the emergence of qualitative research, the emergence of research. Your research, you may start with this title, you may start with these objectives, but that is not basically what you observed along the way. So you have to change, you have to amend the process, you have to amend the objectives, right? And then it has to promote partnership and participation. It has to engage the key stakeholders. It has to promote positive and a more engaging relationship with the parents, the students. It has to be actionable. It has to be clear with what action needs to be done by the students. It has to be clear with what action needs to be done by the parents, for example. your contribution to theory and practice, the methods and processes, the process of reflexivity, being able to represent the different voices in your research, and the significance of your research. Number 1 and number 7, objectives and significance go together. If you do not consider your current context or your real issue, you may have problem dealing with significance because it has to be something that will be significant to your context or to your you know, to your workplace, for example. It has to be significant in classroom. It has to be significant in your school. So these are some of the key considerations. I'm about to end this presentation, and these are some of the key considerations in social, ensuring that your research is or has a social impact. Okay, so and some alternative metrics of your research, for example, when you have published, I cannot end without mentioning this. There are some of the alternative metrics, or we call it the alt metrics of your research. Look at Google Scholar. Google Scholar can be an alternative metrics. So normally, our interpretation of the Scholar H index or Google Scholar H index and the number of citations is basically the usefulness of the research. If there are people who will cite your work, meaning to say it's useful. If there are people who will share your work from the this one is the Altometrics. Anyway, if people mention your paper, if people tweet your article, if people share your article in Facebook, if people are searching for your article, that's basically impact. That's basically social impact because they see the relevance of your research. They are using your research. They are reading your research. So that's some of the alternative metrics of your research. PlumX, for example, mention social media. This one is from the Pablons or the Web of Science or the ISI. You can also check your impact of research in Pablons. This one is in Scopus. The other one is is the ResearchGate. ResearchGate can also show the impact of your articles or the impact of you as a researcher. So researchers have their own H index, and articles also have their specific metrics. So to end this presentation, I'd like you to make sure that you understand what you are doing in your research. I'd like you to go back to the basics of research. So how do you start your research again? You have the topic, you have the objective, and you have the specific focus. Okay, so your focus could come from your research niche. It could be provided by the grant, or it could be provided by, it could be basically based on what your interest is. Then you do some literature review, you do some mapping with regard to what is known or what needs to be done about the topic. So you basically start identifying the topic first, and then your literature, and then identify what needs to be improved. So your problem is now a synthesis of what your context is and what the literature says. Okay, and then in the problem, you will start developing your frameworks or the framing of your research and the relevance of your research. The end product of your problem is basically your research questions. Okay, so when you have your research questions, you can adapt this matrix. Okay, just to make sure that there is a social impact of your research, make sure that you have this alignment of your data needed, data collection strategy or data collection technique, the data analysis technique, and the results and discussion. Okay, and then the conclusion and recommendations. How does this work? Okay, so this may be a very abstract matrix for every one of us, but this is basically what we are doing in research. So deal with the research questions. So if, for example, your research question 1, you identify what kinds of data are needed to answer research question 1. Look at data needed 1, data needed 2, data needed 3. And each data need or needed data has a corresponding data collection strategy. Okay, so it could be qualitative, it could be via interview, via focus group discussion, or it could be quantitative. Okay, and then you look at the analysis process. Maybe you can blend in data 2 and 3 for some inferential analysis. Okay, so the crucial thing here is the results and the conclusion, the discussion and the conclusion, because your discussion is basically reflecting or analyzing your results vis-a-vis your context, vis-a-vis literature. So, saan natin binabangga yung ating results? Results are mere results. These are objective results coming from our data. But when we analyze the results, it becomes our discussion. How do we discuss our results? We discuss our results vis-a-vis our context. What are our political structures? What are some of the guidelines? What are some of the constraints in our context that need that are affected by our results, by our data? What are some of the literature or what are some of the studies that need to be that can be influenced by our results, right, or by our data? And then you synthesize all these things to come up with your conclusion. And then apparently, because tinahi mo sa inyong discussion ang konteksto mo at ang literature, you will have a very sound recommendation, because your recommendation will now be based on what is observable and what the literature says. So basically, you can have implication to practice and you can have an implication to theory. Theory is from literature. Practice is from your own observation or from your own experience. A very common, every time I review papers, a very common observation is that we are so fond of having some sweeping recommendations. Yung mga bagay na nire-recommenda natin, na kahit tanggalin natin yung ating research, ay kaya nating i-recommend. So it's not a sound recommendation because our recommendation has to be something that is anchored on our results. So we look at the implication of our results to our practice, to our theory, to our policy. In summary, I emphasize that the social impact of research is everybody's business. So if you notice in my presentation, it's not just about the teachers doing research. It's the business of CHED. It's the business of DOST. It's the business of NEDA, the DTI, DepEd. It's the business of everybody, the institution, the admin. Research is everybody's business. So it has to be a collective effort of all these stakeholders of education or development so that we can have a sound and socially valuable research. The higher education institutions, the university has to have a sound research agenda. The university has to have a working research and ethics committees. The university has to have linkage and network, because your implication of research will tap these linkages and networks of your university. Perhaps industries, community partners, and the researchers themselves. Okay, how will it impact the paradigm and ethics and the communities? Right. So these are the things that I would like to share about the social impact of your research. If you got more questions regarding this, you can email me using my email address. I am just showing my email address on screen right now. And there, that's all. I guess I can now accept and entertain and address questions if you got any. Let me see the chat box.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Jovito C. Anito Jr. for that substantial and significant presentations relative to the social impact of research in education. Indeed, we really have a deep understanding about the social impact of research in education, considering its alignment to the international and national research agenda, dimensions, evaluation, criteria, and the like that provided as relevant impact to every individual's engaging research in the real life setting. All right, thank you very much. And moving on, I think Professor Jovito Anito is now ready to accept questions relative to his presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. Dr. Jovito, would it be okay if we will have first the second presenter, and then we'll have the open forum as one?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much, Professor Jovito Anito, for that very nice presentation. Moving on, for the introduction of our second speaker, we are happy to have here Sir Jose Vicente A. Regalado, the Education Program Specialist 2 of the Commission on Higher Education, to introduce to us our second resource speaker for this morning webinar. Sir?
Good morning. Our next speaker is a former instructor at Pilar College of Zamboanga City, Universidad de Zamboanga, and Zamboanga State College of Marine Sciences and Technology. He has authored and peer-reviewed researches and professional papers in the areas of genealogy, museology, historiography spanning in the Asia-Pacific region for over a decade. He is a member of the 5 scientific societies, both national and international, and as associate member of the prestigious National Research Council of the Philippines. He serves as a visiting curator of the Museo de la Universidad de Zamboanga, Eustaquio Family Genealogy, Lamitan Library and Museum, Nawasa Heritage Tower, and Yakan Village of Mindanao. He co-authored Arturo Fargas Eustaquio III, Life Experiences, Lasting Education, and Living Ideas in 2018, published by Inkwell, A Glimpse of Zamboanga History and Beyond in 2017, published by Rex Publishing House, and Archie Commemorative in 2014, published by Inkwell. He completed Master in History cum laude at the University of Santo Tomas and full fellow at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He is currently designated as the Research Director and Curator of Universidad de Zamboanga. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael Vincent P. Caceres.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I think we have less than 30 minutes before noontime. So I'll try to end my presentation by noontime. So we'll go straight to the point, to the presentation. Okay, so I'll be discussing to you the importance of data mining in research, writing, history, or historical qualitative research design for journal publication. So qualitative research, that is a very broad topic to discuss. Normally, we spend 1 semester in the graduate school, others spend it in 2 semesters, and then you spend 1 year writing your paper. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, others decided not to return to the graduate school because of some traumatic experiences. But basically, why do we do research? There are only two things. One, we want to generate new ideas. We are trying to discover new ideas. The second reason why we go into research because we want testing of ideas. We want to test theories. We want to challenge previous findings or previous researches. These are the two basic reasons why we go into research. Second, the benefits when you go into research. That is something that is personal, self-fulfillment maybe. It may be in a form of a requirement in the department, in the university, or in the research center. And the third one, our favorite, the funding or the financial benefit that you can get in doing research. You can get grants coming from the Commission on Higher Education, the DOST, NGOs, and other private organizations abroad. Let us say the Asia Foundation and the USA. You can get funding from that. There's what we call the challenge and response theory when we do research, or the reason why we go into research. Number one, it's because of the accreditation. We are into research. The university needs the accreditation, and the research is a major requirement in doing research. joining PAASCO, joining PACOCOA, AACO, and other accrediting agencies. Part of that is that shed compliance. The technical panel will do inspection of the program. They will always ask about the research strength of the university. Next challenge is the budget. Once you have the research, most likely the budget of the state university will also increase because of the number of research output that you can produce. Similarly, even among private universities, if you are engaged into research, there's the tendency that the university will be able to get bigger grants coming from external agencies to fund the university. The other reason or the challenge is the promotion and ranking. If you intend to become a professor, we go into research and then we go into publication. And then the last one is the bragging rights. It may not be that too common, let us say in Region 9, but when you check the Times Higher Education QS, one tool that they check in ranking universities, it's the research capabilities of the universities in publication and citations. The first speaker mentioned about ISI and Scopus. That's the basis in ranking the universities. In the Philippines, we have the four big universities are really competing on the bragging rights, and the research plays a very vital role in these bragging rights. And then we have other players coming in other than Ateneo, LaSalle, UP, UST. We have San Carlos, Siliman, MSU are also into Times Higher Education QS as part of that bragging rights. I consider the following as knowledge center. Okay, the graduate school, they produce great ideas for research. The research center is also a knowledge center in producing great ideas for research. The school library is also a knowledge center in producing great ideas where you can get your specific data that you would like to generate. Now, there's what we call the changing landscape in research. Before, when we talk about research, normally the scholars are really talking about research. Later on, the scientists were also talking about research. They're into this field. The professors are into research. If you want to have that rank, professors are heavily engaged into research. And then the changing landscape, teachers are now engaged into research. Even those in the basic education, they are now pressured to do research or part of the requirement for their promotion. The librarians recently invited me also to give a lecture. Accreditation are also pressuring librarians to produce their own research. That's part of the requirement and part of the changing landscape of the research. Because before we normally talk research, it's only in the research center. But now even librarians are also talking about researches and they have to produce and publish it. And the last one, the administrative staff. When accreditors would come or the technical panel, they will check the programs, but at the same time, they will also check respective offices connected to your program. Let us say the student affairs, they will ask the technical panel or the accreditors researches produced by the student services office, researches produced by the library, researches produced even by the security office of the university with relevance to the behavioral studies. So even offices in the university are also encouraged to go into research. Okay, what is qualitative? Okay, so basically as a review, the word qualitative implies an emphasis on the quality or entities and on processes and meanings not experimentally examined or measured. So meaning qualitative, you don't measure it mathematically or statistically. So qualitative research is stressed on the social condition, the nature, the reality, intimate relationship between researcher, that you are trying to study a specific question or situation. So it answers questions, including experiences that will give you meaning in the long run. Okay. Now, from qualitative, I'll go to a specific field. I cannot discuss to you psychology, sociology, and other fields under social sciences. I just pick one because of the time. History is a branch of knowledge in social sciences or humanities. It's a body of discipline. Recording of events, past events, narrative in nature, chronological places, and persons of significant value. Normally, even accreditors, when they visit the university or the specific program, that is the College of Education, they will ask you, is there a research conducted related to the College of Education or to the university? So there's no research output being presented to the accreditor when the accreditor wanted to see the evolution of the program or the evolution of the university. That's why try to encourage faculty members under the social science and the humanities department to consider in writing the history of the university and the history of the college or specific program, because that is a plus points when the accreditor will visit the university for inspection. So part of that historical writing, the narratives, how the program came into being, and then part of the performance of the program, whether that is in board examination or in, let us say, competition, regional, national, and international. So you try to document it, documenting the program as to its historical evolution and performances and its relevance to the university and to the general community of the city is also important. And then, of course, for those who will be assigned in writing history, just for the benefit for those not in the field of history, try to consider historiography. Okay, so the writing of history based on critical examination of sources, selection of particulars from authentic materials, and form this into narrative, stand the test of critical method. So meaning, when you hear the word historiography, it refers to the quality of materials being used, okay? The authenticity of the material, the primary, whether that material is a primary source to be used in the university in writing the history of the university or writing the history of the college, let's say the College of Education or the College of Criminology. So what are the documents that you can make use in writing the history? Other than conducting interviews from the senior faculty members of the university or the institution. Sample historiography, these are some of the tips that you can make use or classification in writing the history of the university or the program. One, you can make use diaries. Maybe a certain faculty member has a diary willing to share about the experience of that faculty member in the university or in the College of Education or College of Criminology. And then the letters sent by the dean or faculty members, let's say to the Commission on Higher Education or to the Department of Education. You can examine that, the memorandum, the memo sent. You can review that. Other offices might have kept some of these materials. Later on, we can discuss the relationship of these materials to data mining. So these are some of the materials that you can really make use when you write the history of the university or the program. Next is records coming, let's say, example, no? Bureau of Customs, the cedula, the certificates. These are examples of historiography. But you can also make use, if you are, of course, from the College of Education, you can make use records from the Commission on Higher Education. You can make use records coming from the Department of Education. Official records coming from that offices are considered part of historiography because these are authentic materials. Books, print or e-copy are considered part of historiography. Of course, you need to examine the author, the publisher, because historiography is the field of history that speaks about the authenticity of the material. Okay. And then artifacts, jars, if you are in the field of anthropology. But if you're in the field of the College of Education, you can study the classroom set up, let us say, if the College of Education, let us say, established in the 1950s, what was the classroom setup of the College of Education or basic education at that time? Okay, the segregation of the male, female, and it became co-ed. So you look at the specific collections also of the College of Education or the university. Old tables, old chairs, let's say old records, old computers, it form part of the artifacts of the university. Uh, that's my field. I'm in the field of museology. I set up exhibition for university museums. Important collections of the university are being deposited. And then part of this, even those in the field of museum, university museum, we don't do mounting exhibition without conducting research. We always start with a research. So if you have a bad research, most likely we really end up also with bad exhibition. So a good exhibition is grounded from a very good research. So you start with the research, and out of that research, you can come up with the exhibition, or you can do a mount of your exhibition. And then there's what we call datable expression, the use of currency, pictures, and in the field of history. In the field of College of Education, in the College of Education, I think you have collection of good pictures that will show you the evolution of the university or the specific college. Pictures from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 80s, 90s, up to the present time. You do a presentation of those pictures that will supplement as a major material when you study or you write the history of the program or of the university. The structures considered also as part of the historiography, buildings, monuments, statues, this form part when you write the history of the college. Okay? Uh, Check the different buildings of the university. Maybe the College of Education occupied building one before in the 1950s, and then transferred in the 1960s, transferred in the 1970s, and then constructed in the year 2000. So part of your documentation in the writing the history of your college is also to review the location or the specific structure of the college where it was located before and up to the present. You need to do documentation of that. These are important heritage image of the university that you can do marketing. And then we have what we call the historical method. One specific area under qualitative, you do verification, the synthesis of evidences, you establish facts, you refute hypotheses from the secondary sources, use variety of documents and evidences. As I mentioned, you check on logs, diaries, records, security records. You can also make use records from the registrar's office. I also make use that when I write when writing of the history of the university, a program offered by the universities. The library is a very good repository of information where you can generate data, not only current data, but even previous data. When we talk about data mining, the registrar's office is a very good avenue for data mining, both for quantitative and qualitative researches. And then you can make use of your university archives if you have the non-textual information like maps. Maybe somebody prepared a map of the university, let us say campus map, campus site. That is also a very good material when you write the history of the university. Pictures of the university, audiovisual collections. Our current era is an era of full of information. Like this presentation, this is being recorded 10 years, 20 years from now. New breed of researchers will be coming in and can make use of this audio and visual recording. Of course, we also study limitation of sources, what makes it valid and what makes it invalid. So what do these studies tell you? The historical approach is well suited for trend analysis. You can understand the situation of the College of Education at present. If you are also going to look the history of the college or of the program a decade before, 2 decades before, or to the period when the program was established or introduced. Historical records can add important contextual background required to more fully understand and interpret it as a research problem. So there is no possibility of researcher-subject interaction that could affect the findings also. Historical sources can be used over and over to study different research problems or to replicate a previous study. So meaning historical researches can be used as basis even by other areas in social sciences, whether you are in qualitative or quantitative. They look at the background of that specific program or that specific college or even the university in general. Okay, why this university is really performing so good, no? Performing well, no, at the present. You can look into the previous data of the university, but that data is better seen if that is presented into a historical research. So historical research is very important to a university and to the respective colleges because you look at previous data collated. Normally, when I do presentation and actual lecture, I give an activity for under qualitative. I don't immediately ask them, produce a title. Normally, I show them pictures and then I simply ask them, can you describe this picture, especially for those who do not have background in research at all. So out of that picture, I ask them to describe, and then I ask them to think of a historical title or title of that picture related to history or related to education or related to criminology. And then I ask them why this title, okay? Why, why, why this kind of title cross your mind, okay? So the faculty or the researcher explains the importance of that title. Example of this, I presented in one of my lectures this picture, and then I asked them, can you describe this picture? So they gave their descriptions, explanations on these pictures, and out of that description, uh, they classified it like by period. No, let us say they explained it the more fashion industry of the mid 1880s or mid 1800s, the fashion industry of that period, and then they created a title out of that, and then they describe what is the title of this picture or research to be that will be generated out of this picture. And then I also presented another picture. I also asked them, can you describe this picture? And then can you think of a title of this picture? And then you explain to me what is the meaning of this title and why this title. So in a way, they were able to produce, let us say, the specific title that is intended for a qualitative research, that is historical research in nature. Of course, I think this is a famous structure, the Torre de Manila. I also asked them, describe this picture. So at the time, I think this was about in 2000, mid 2000, when this became very controversial. And then I asked the participants to describe the picture and then give a title to this picture and explain why this title. And of course, the last that I presented was the map, created by Rizal. So they also describe the picture, produce the title, and then explain the title. So from history, we will shift to education. Similarly, if I'll be presenting that into the field of education, you will be producing also a title that is related to education. Okay? Let us say the importance of mapping design for education, the importance of campus map for accreditation that will give an impact for your accreditation. And then out of that description, you can produce the title, and then from that title, you can slowly break that down into specific objectives. Okay. We have what we call data materials. We have what we call the primary materials and the secondary materials. The one that I explained about historiography, generally they belong to primary materials. These are authentic materials, written or in oral tradition that form part of the primary materials. Documents are examples of primary materials. Speeches are form of primary materials. Secondary materials, these are materials like textbooks. These are secondary materials. Or let us say narrative that you heard from a specific person, but that person is considered as listener of a speech, certain speech. So that becomes a secondary material. But if you are the listener of that specific speech, that becomes a primary material. Speeches are considered primary materials also. Now, there's also a question about publication and the correct format. Actually, the correct format, it depends. Let's say the university journal, you follow the university journal, that's the correct format. Or depending upon which specific university journal you would like to submit your paper. Normally, I recommend the faculty members to submit to university journals, reputable university journals, research journals, not necessarily from the university, independent research journals. But of course, you have to be very careful about this because there are research journals that will charge you for certain fee or fees. That's why I encourage you to submit papers to university journals because normally they will not charge you. It will follow certain protocols into evaluation by panel of experts. Correct format for publication depends. Let us say the funding agency is coming from the OST, coming from CHED, coming from the National Commission for the Culture and the Arts, coming from the USA, coming from the Asia Foundation. Okay, they have their specific format that you have to follow. And then institutes, they also have the research format. Let us say you would like to submit papers in the Institute of Philippine Culture, you would like to submit papers in the Philippine Institute for Pure and Applied Chemistry. They have their own format. So if you want your paper will have the chances of being published, you have to review or to study the kind of format being implemented by specific university, research journal, funding agencies, and institutes. Follow that format. Now, when you do research by itself, the most common format, the university format, of course, you start with the title, the approval sheet, the dedication, acknowledgement. You go for an abstract, then you go for table of contents. And then we normally go into debate whether as to the number of chapters. There's what they call chapters 1, 2, 3, 4. Normally, the literature, they will just collapse that most likely in chapter 2 or in chapter 3. The conventional one, we still follow chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, that's the most common to us. Chapter 1, it covers research question, the significance of study, scope, limitation, operation, definition of conceptual terminology. So it depends upon from a specific university. And then literature, it depends also from the university if they will still practice the chapter 2 covering literature, studies, theoretical framework, or conceptual framework. Others would most likely will simply collapse it either in the methodology, others will collapse it under discussion. But the most common, we still have what we call the most common format. We still go into methods and procedure, methodology, research method, the research design. I will not read. And then discussion and referring to participants and their stories, since I'm presenting under qualitative researches. So for those who are not really into quali, so normally you will gather participants, and this is the most challenging time because we are in the pandemic, everything is online. So, but in a normal situation, you do FGD, but even at the current situation, you can still get their stories. Narrative, I normally make use of narratives that will form part of my discussion as a major technique in writing. Here, you can invite senior faculty members of the universities or of the College of Education, those retired employees of the College of Education, to provide narratives in order you will be able to plot the history of the college or the university. And then you proceed to chapter 5, findings, conclusion, recommendation, and all other items, reference, appendices, and the curriculum detail that you need. In general, branches or areas of history, if you are in the field of history, you can do a study under art history, cultural history, diplomatic history, the history of science, economic history, and other fields: historiography, environmental history, intellectual history, military history, naval, geography, philosophy, political, and public history. Okay. Now, data mining. In general, data mining is about extracting usable data from a larger set or raw data. It's about statistics or trends or patterns. When you talk about data mining, it's about softwares. We talk about regression. We talk about decision tree. So meaning data mining, it's really into quantitative research. It's really quantitative because we are talking here about softwares. The SPSS can generate data for data mining. You input there the, let us say, you get data from the registrar's office, or you go to the field, you get certain population, you try to input that into the SPSS or certain softwares on regression and decision tree software. But that is quantitative. Okay. But we can talk data mining in qualitative research. So how can you use data mining in qualitative research, considering qualitative is non-a quantifiable research? Data mining, systematic arrangement of notes is an example of data mining. Interviews, dispatches, text messages, that will form part of your data mining in qualitative. I devise a matrix. Out of that matrix, I use cluster, or you do clustering of notes, clustering of documents, clustering of interviews. You create certain matrix of text messages, and then you try to group that. That will form part of data mining under qualitative research. Most likely, you will handle, let us say, 30 nodes to 50 nodes, 30 to 50 narratives, because it's important that you need to create a matrix for easy interpretation and easy monitoring of the narratives provided by the participants. It's very difficult to handle 100 respondents or participants under qualitative. If you have 100, better go to quantitative. Now, in cases you have 30 participants, 50 participants provided you the narratives, you need to do data mining by creating matrix or by clustering it. That is already classified under or considered under data mining. Records coming from observatories are part of the data mining. Observatories, they study, let us say, the weather condition. The Manila Observatory. Pag-asa is very rich in data mining. You can request that if you want to study, let us say, the number of earthquakes that occurred sa Zamboanga in the last 2 decades. Data coming from the DOH, even the current pandemic, that will form part of the data mining. Data coming from CHED, coming from DepEd, you can devise that into a data mining by collecting the narratives of faculty members, let us say under stress condition. In your specific college, you can do data mining. If you want to study, let's say, a specific condition or situation in the college, the reaction of students and the members of the academe. But you want to deal that in a narrative form. So you devise a matrix that will form part of your data mining. Okay. These are sample publications, as mentioned by the first speaker. Try to do something when you completed the research. It should not stay inside the library or inside the graduate school or inside the research center. You have to make it happen that it will be published by specific journals. So these are some of the historical researches that I conducted and then was published in Philippine e-journals, sample publication, accepted by Xavier University. When I wrote the history of the Sultanate of Sulu, sample publication on the history of Sulu and Tawi-Tawi, and related history to the specific, let us say, genealogy, and let us say the history of the specific area. Okay. Sample history of a prominent person from Zamboanga, form part of the genealogy. Okay. Sample publication discussing to you the history of the Sulu Sultanate. Okay. So that ends my presentation at exactly 12 noon. Thank you and good day.
All right, thank you very much, Director Michael Vincent Caceres, for the very concise and satisfying presentation about the importance of data mining in research. And surely we have discerned the general information and the relevance of data mining in relation to the conduct of qualitative research. Also, we have guided as to the correct format that facilitates us that facilitates the aspiring and expert researchers using the data mining for qualitative research. All right. Moving on, I think everyone has reserved questions for our open forum. All right.
Sir Victor.
Dr. Quaresma, please.
We are now ready for the questions. Yes, Ma'am Pen, you're raising your hand.
Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our versatile guest speakers for the information shared. Thank you very much, Sir Caceres, my amigo, and the first speaker. Okay, I would like to address the first question, then answer, then second question to the second speaker, then answer. Okay, this is my first question to the first speaker. Sir, you know, pandemic now is really a very deadly moral dilemma now. And as a former research director of UC, I'm so amazed. I'm amazed to how would you share some tips on your plans doing research online? Napakahirap ng research ngayon, I believe. Sir, pwede pang maki-share po kayo? First speaker, please.
Ano yun ulit, ma?
Yes.
Maka-share ng
your plans, because research now during the pandemic is very different, difficult to conduct. Can you please share some of your plans doing research, qualitative or?
I can only speak for my personal plan because I'm in no way connected and I'm in no way in the position to represent the research office. But the biggest challenge, I understand where you're coming from, is the data collection in these times of pandemic. We know we cannot have the usual interview, the survey, and I guess we have transitioned into innovative data collection strategies also. For example, we have started already having conversations. Instead of the usual interviews, we are now going into online conversations. That's one of the issues that we are discussing right now. We're writing a chapter of the Asian Handbook on Qualitative Research, and that's one of the ethical issues that we are discussing, the ethics behind online data collection. But at any rate, these are potent and these are our best options this time. how else can we gather data except to really connect, however or in whatever manner we can connect with our respondents or with our participants. So online data collection is a good option, and surveys can also be done online. There are already different tools. Uh, there's no much concern about data collection done online in terms in the quantitative paradigm. Because it's the usual, that's the common. It's very objective anyway. Ang concern lang natin sa online ay kapag nag-quali tayo kasi may ethics tayo sa quali na talagang sinusundan. But at any rate, I am still actively engaged in doing conducting research despite this pandemic. May mga nakapilang projects and most of this will be online na.
Apo, I would like to thank you, and I agree with your contentions that you talk about usability of research. That's number one. Yung iba kasi nilalangaw na lang yung research paper doon, wala namang usability sa community, and that is social impact. I agree with you, and research is money. Thank you so much, sir. This is Dr. Penelope Colisao from Zamboanga State College of Marine Sciences and Technology. I'd like
Thank
to
you so
address
much,
my...
Hello to our
I would
friends
like
there.
to raise my question on the second speaker, mio amigo. Parehas kita the UST. Okay, sir. Can you, I know Sir Caceres, my friend, is an international consultant for research. He's just very silent. Can you share us, Sir Caceres, your tips on how to link with international research publication? Yun lang po.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Penny, my former boss in the university. Okay. As to your question, linking with the international publications, I think the first speaker was able to present some ideas, in publishing your work with international journals. Normally, it would be easy if you are affiliated or a member of a certain international body or society. You have access on that. Secondly, establishing linkages with specific experts and researchers from other universities. Let us say you establish a connection through emails, even FB through your foreign counterparts of similar field of study. Let us say museology, or you are in the field of political economy. So you try to reach out other experts coming from other universities in Asia or in Europe. They will give you the idea of how your paper will be able to reach the publication of their university or specific journals. Of course, again, it's getting the paper published in an international journal is not an easy way. It's very competitive. They have their own international board of evaluators or international editorial board. Similarly, even as in the Philippines, let's say LaSalle, they also have their international board of editors. So you will follow certain standards and procedure with that. But again, how to get linked, establish friendship with similar experts from other universities, because they will lead you to that publication. Second, from funding agencies. If you are able to secure funding, most likely the funding agencies also will lead you to certain journals that your paper will be able to publish.
Okay, thank you. Salamat po. Kudos. Okay na, ma'am.
All right. Is there any clarification questions coming from our participants?
JM, there's a question from Sir Moro sent to me in privately.
Yes, sir.
He's asking
Yes,
if I can share for other HEIs a framework or platform on research or program, how an institution can start a research with social impact. I would recommend to follow the PDSA. It's a very potent framework. It could be taken both as a conceptual and as a methodological framework or an operational framework. If you recall my presentation about the PDSA, it's ensuring social impact because apparently it starts with your context. It starts with your institutional culture. It starts with your institutional context, your capabilities, your constraints, your problems, your issues. So the PDSA, I see it as a very potent tool or a potent framework in ensuring social impact because it will address this. You will provide action plans to address this, and you have a clear set of units or organizations or groups that will benefit from your research. I can share my presentation to everyone. I'll just find a way where I could uh, probably send it so everybody can have access to it.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Javito Anito. How about the others? Thank you. And so far, all right. Thank you very much once again. Thank you very much to our expert resource speakers, Professor Javito Cianito and Director Michael Vincent P. Caceres for that very nice presentation. All right. Moving on to present the certificate of appreciation to our resource speakers. Let us call in Dr. Mario F. Alayon, the President of the Council of Deans for Teacher Education, Region 9. Sir?
Thank you, Sir Jmar.
Thank you, sir.
Panagdait sa tanan, good morning to Dr. Joanne Quarisma, our Teacher Education Supervisor, to Dr. Abelardo Morok, the Education Supervisor of the Criminal Justice Education, to the other chat officials present or listening. Of course, to our resource speakers, the substance of your talk, I believe, leave a mark to all who are present. Professor Hobito Anito Jr., Professor Michael Vincent Caceres, to the school heads and deans, also the deans of the different higher education institutions of the College of Criminology, the officers of the Council of Deans for Criminal Justice, our the research directors, researchers, faculty members, and academic support staff present. After listening to the talk of Professor Anito and Professor Caceres, personally, I am filled with desire to do research. However, can I make excuse of the many works thus expected for us to comply? If we will say that learning must continue, the same value should be given to research. Research must continue, even there is pandemic. However, I find qualitative research design appropriate when we look at the quality of our instructions, our delivery. I am almost to the point of asking to our research speakers what are the research agenda that they can recommend for us in the HEIs to do research. However, we do not have the luxury of time to listen to and to hear that, no, to voice out that question. So with this, I am very thankful in behalf of the officers of the Council of Deans for Teacher Education, and of course with the active, dynamic support of our teacher education program supervisors and the Director of the Commission on Higher Education, our thankful and simple presentation of our token of appreciation to Dr. Jovito Gianito. Sir, can I read the next slide? So the Commission on Higher Education with the Council of Deans for Teacher Education hereby awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Sir Jovito C. Anito Jr., Associate Professor of Jose Rizal Memorial State University, for being the resource speaker during the social impact on research and education through Zoom online conference given this 14th day of August 2020, Zamboanga City, Philippines, signed by our OIC CHED Director. Thank you, sir. And the same certificate of appreciation is given to Sir Michael Vincent P. Caceres, Research Director and Curator of Universidad de Zamboanga, for being our research speaker, introducing the topic on the introduction to quality research through this online conference. Again, thank you very much. God bless and amping ta sa kanunay.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mario F. Alayan, the President of the Councils of Deans for Teacher Education Region 9. And of course, this new time, let's proceed for our photo opportunity. Kindly open. May we request everyone to please open your camera.
Okay, first page.
Sir Seed.
Ayan po, wait lang po. Okay,
All right.
ready? 1, 2, 3. First page. Okay, wait lang.
Good noon, Ma'am Tan, Doc Tan. Good noon.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Tapos na po. Okay na po.
All right. Thank you very much, Sir Seed. At this point in time, let us hear an impression coming from our board of director, one of the board of directors of the Councils of Deans for Teacher Education, no less than Dr. Elizabeth Jane Sebastian. Doc?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Again, I would like to say CODTE with CHED Region 9 has come up with this very informative webinar activity. In behalf of the participants, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to the two experts in their own respective rights, Professor Jovito Anito Jr. and Professor Michael Vincent Caceres, for sharing their precious time. Research, as we all know in this pandemic event, is very important, although education institution has been doing this since it is one of its mandate. So as an institution of learning, as time is changing, academic impact and social impact, as what the first speaker said, is a good inclination of doing research at this time. As observed, life is changing. A research must blend with science to understand the phenomena. Professor Anito mentioned the alignment of research to a variety of agenda from institutional to international agenda. I would like to make mention also when he said, start a research, something to be done. If your research influence people, that is social impact of the research. As well as writing of research as discussed by Professor Caceres, it is equally important learning about data mining for quantitative research as well as qualitative. These are very useful in research work because there are times we tend to forget that there are available data that are very useful. And of course, the publication of our research is also important because that is where we can share it and find out the impact of it to the public. Thank you very much again, Sir Anito and Sir Caceres, for your precious time with CODTE and Chef 9. Muchísimas gracias a todo. Good noon. Good afternoon. Good noon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jane Elizabeth,
Thank you,
Elizabeth Jane Sebastian. And of course, once again, we are honored to thank again our very expert, our expert resource speakers, Professor Jovito Cianito, Director Michael Vincent P. Caceres, for giving us your time and expertise in the discussion of the research topics that you presented. At this point in time, we will call in Dr. Jacinta R. Tan, our OIC Chief Education Program Specialist of the Commission on Higher Education Region 9, to give us the closing remarks. Doc?
Hello to the Council of Deans for Teacher Education, the officers, directors, and members, our resource speakers, our faculty members who are present now, and to the rest of I've seen 50 participants. Buenos dias again. And I would like to say that God will protect us all. I am happy indeed that the Council of Deans for Teacher Education has come up with this kind of webinar more on research. This is one of the weaknesses or the weakest link we have experienced in the office during our monitoring activity. Very few faculty during this time who are engaging in the relevant researches. And that worries us so much, considering if we have to compare from the other regions most of them are very active in conducting relevant researches. We were wondering if it is in the culture of the researchers or the culture of researchers that most of the faculty doesn't have any interest to conduct research works. So I believe with our two resource speakers this morning, Dr. Jovito C. Anito Jr. and Director Michael Vincent B. Caceres, were able to convince and to open up the mind of all of us today to conduct relevant researches. My salute and admiration to our two resource speakers for their expertise shared to us this morning. It was a great, informative topics presented. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much. I am looking forward, we at the Regional Office 9, that this will serve as a very good platform to continuously strengthen our research project and activities for our region. We are challenging the Council of Deans for Teacher Education, even probably the graduate education, to have more researches. A research that can contribute to the social impact, both change and economic impact. Not researches that will just end up in the shelves of our respective institutions. We would like to see research work, as mentioned by the first speaker, with scholarly works. And as mentioned by the second speaker, that it must be published in the journal as even required now in our new CMO 15. Let us remember that research is one of the major crusts of the Commission and even in your institutions. So let us love research, and must have a mindset that research is part of discovering knowledge and develop new theory. We have to make it sure that for every researches we conducted, we have to gain more knowledge and come up with new theory. So with this reflection, hopefully everybody would contribute to research in our own little way for the social improvement in our community, regional and national and even international, as mentioned by Dr. Penelope. Dr. Caceres is a very good, we have a good linkages for international researches. So in behalf of the OIC Regional Director, Dr. Rodi Garcia, thank you for your attendance this morning. I would also like to say thank you to Dr. Quaresma and of course our MC, Jmar Solarte. Despite of this webinar, you are in Pagadian, I believe. Okay. Okay. Our OIC SEPs, Dr. Lard Morok, our president again of the Council of Deans, Dr. Mario F. Alayon, together with the active officers and members of the Council of Deans for Teacher Education. As well, also, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the officers of the Council of Deans for Criminal Justice Education. Muchísimas gracias. Maraming salamat. Daghan salamat. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and ora buena, Council of Deans for Teacher Educations. And of course, as mentioned, I have heard from Dr. Mario, amping ta sa kanunay. Kanunay. So, muchísimas gracias y buenos días.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jacinta R. Tan,
Sir,
our OIC Chief Education Program Specialist of CHED Region 9. Okay, that ends for our webinar. Ma'am Joanne, I think, do you have any announcement? Okay.
I just would like again to reiterate, thank you so much to our speakers. You had made a great impact to the teachers, educators who are present today. As what Dr. Mario had mentioned and Dr. Tan, the research is really a key if we want to push through with education, quality education. That's it. So from the bottom of our heart, thank you so much, and for all the support. Dr. Tan, Dr. Maro, my colleague here, Dr. Dennis, and Sir Conrad, thank you for joining this morning, and all participants as well. For your certificate, this is the link for the presentation. Dr. Jubito and Sir Caceres have shared their, so we will just send it after you will register in our official page. Thank you. Thank you also, Sir JV, Sir.
Thank you very much, Basilan State College.
Oh, thank you, sir, from Basilan State College. Wait. Okay yung signal natin dyan, sir?
Pwede na, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
News article will be posted in Facebook this afternoon about 2 hours from now. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Ma'am Pen. You better also see, you mentioned a while ago you're not feeling well. So
I'm okay.
Not just take it for granted.
Thank you.
To our officers, please stand by.
Thank you for.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting you all.
JV, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir
Thank you,
Mikey,
ma'am. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
For
Joe.
Bye-bye, ma'am. Thank you.
But the officers, please stand by.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Professor Anito and Mike, gracias
Mag-leave
kayo.
lang,
Yan, send your picture na dito yung email, messenger with the guards na sites, picture.